with your God.
Thank you, Emily. Our second reading for this morning is the same as the first. That is not a typo. Although several people asked me this week if I was slipping. I am not. I'm going to reread what Emily just read, because these words need to be heard often. From the prophet Micah, chapter 6, verses 6 through 8. With what shall I come before the Lord, and bow myself before God on high? Shall I come before him with burnt offerings, with calves a year old? Will the Lord be pleased with thousands of rams, with tens of thousands of rivers of oil? Shall I give my firstborn for my transgression, the fruit of my body for the sin of my soul? God has told you, O mortal, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you? But to do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God. This ends the reading of our lessons for this Sunday morning. God is speaking to us through these words. When God speaks, the words are true, and we can trust them. Now, I am beyond delighted to introduce to you my friend Justin Wilder, who is going to come and take the pulpit today and speak to us. I'm not going to give him a long introduction because I've done that twice already this week in the Scoop newsletter and by an email, and I want him to have all the time that he needs. So, Justin, the pulpit is yours.
Good morning. I'd like to begin today by thanking Pastor Brookings for this opportunity for me to speak to you this morning. I'd also like to thank and congratulate you all on the work that you continue to do to become an open and affirming congregation. The work you are doing is crucial to the well-being and, in some cases, survival of LGBTQ people in your community. I must confess to you all, my story is not particularly unique. The trauma that I've endured is my own. However, if you were to get a group of LGBTQ people in a room together, you would soon realize that many of us have had similar traumas and experiences. I was born on a cold December day, in 1985. I was the light of my parents' eyes, and I definitely still am, just to be very clear. I was brought up in an evangelical free church. From the day I was born, I was brought and involved in the church. My mother was the organist. Oddly enough, my dad had nothing to do with the church. However, it was important to my mom that I be raised in the church. Then in 1987, the unthinkable happened. I had a sister who was born with severe health complications, and my mother's involvement, and therefore my involvement, with the church skyrocketed. You see, my mother's involvement in the church is quite like many of your own. Especially with my sister's severe health needs, she yearned for community. At the heart of church was and is community. Leaders at our church convinced my mother that I should attend Christian education. I went to a Christian preschool. I continued through Christian education through the 8th grade. Now, I feel like I need to pause here and let you all know that I absolutely loved church as a child. I saw the important work that was being done by church leaders. In fact, I knew at a young age that I wanted to be a pastor. I wanted to help people through the highs and lows of their life. I wanted to lead and was called to do so. Unfortunately, I had a crisis of faith at a very young age. At the age of 9 years old, when I was in 3rd grade, was the first time I had ever heard the word gay. It was also the first time it was directed at me. It would not be the last. I had no idea what the word meant. However, since my classmates were using the word to describe me and then laugh and point it at me, I figured it was bad. That night, I got in my mother's car, and she picked me up from school, and she could tell immediately that something was wrong. If you're not picking up on this, I'm very close with my mother. Very, very close. She asked me how my day at school was, and the first question out of my mouth was, "What does gay mean?" I could tell she was a little shocked. And she proceeded to tell me that gay was a word used for people who are attracted to people of the same gender. I knew at that very moment that gay absolutely described me. But from that moment forward, I was bound and determined to be anything but gay, which I know as you hear me talk is funny because there's clearly no choice in the matter. And that's okay, you're allowed to laugh at that. I wish I could say that one experience that I had in 3rd grade was the only time I was made fun of. However, the bullying from my peers, kids who were supposed to be Christian, was absolutely relentless. I recently spoke of my crisis of faith, and it's really quite simple. I saw Christian classmates absolutely tormenting me, and yet 30 minutes before, we would gather for chapel or Bible class and learn about how Jesus was kind to all. He told us to love our neighbors. I was having the first moment of crisis because if this was people's ideas of treating people like Jesus, I wanted nothing to do with it. I tried everything I could to not act gay or give my classmates any reason to make fun of me. None of it mattered. For the next 5 years, the bullying from my classmates was absolutely relentless. There were days that I wanted nothing more than to go to sleep and wished I would never wake up. And to give you an idea, I'm going to be 38 years old in December. These memories live within me like it was yesterday. I remember very well one Sunday where I didn't want to go to Sunday school because there were people in Sunday school who went to my school and made fun of me. I asked my mom if I could stay in the main church service, to which she said yes. As luck would have it, that was the first day that I heard a leader of a church say that gay people would live their life eternally in hell. I knew very well by that point that I was gay, and I had just heard that I was going straight to hell. Back in school, the bullying came to a head in 8th grade when my classmates shoved me into a girls' locker room, slammed me up against the wall, and said that the girls' locker room was my rightful place because I acted more like a girl. My crisis of faith had come full circle, and my faith had been completely ripped away from me. That night, I went home and begged my mother to let me go to public schools. I told her that I didn't want to live if I had to take one more day at that school. I could tell that she was scared for me to go to public school, but I know now that she was more afraid that I would not survive. I did not return to church. I did not return to youth group. And I let my dreams of being a pastor, I let them go. In public schools, I was definitely still teased, but I also found a group of friends who loved me. I was still determined that I was not gay because I still had it in my head that if I were gay, my life and eternity would be disastrous. I got heavily involved with theater, music, and the arts, and really found my place in high school. I learned also that I was a gifted singer and attended the University of Wisconsin in Stevens Point on a large vocal scholarship. I immediately connected with classmates in college and was truly happy. They were good people who cared. 2 of my classmates one day asked me if I wanted to come with them to church some Sunday. I enjoyed my time with them, so I decided to attend. The first day at the church was great. I felt welcomed. I truly wondered if my relationship with God could be repaired. I knew that I still didn't want to be a pastor. However, I enjoyed community, and I wondered if maybe I could have a community within this church. 2 weeks later, at my 3rd Sunday at church, I heard a familiar sermon, that gay people are going straight to hell. I got on the bus to go back to school and silently prayed to God to make me anything but who I was. I didn't want to be gay. I wanted to be what I thought was normal, and I absolutely hated myself. In that silent prayer, I got a very clear answer back from the universe or God. It was very clear. The answer I got was that I was asking the wrong questions, that God had absolutely no plans to make me anything but what I am because I was created in God's image. To be certain, I was not convinced. However, it took me another year to finally be okay with myself to come out. That was nearly 18 years ago, and this is the first time that I have attended church without being paid to do so as a choir director in 18 years. Since then, as you can tell, I've had very little to do with any kind of formal religion. What I have done is I've met the love of my life and married my amazing husband. That idea of the normal life that I so wanted, I got it. So you may be asking yourself, what does this have to do with the work of our congregation? And to that I say it has everything to do with your important work. When I was growing up and in college, I never heard of a congregation trying to bring LGBTQ people into their flock. In fact, it was quite the opposite. We were actively encouraged to not come to church. The few times that I had heard of pastors trying to welcome LGBTQ people into their church, they were mysteriously reassigned to a new congregation. And of course, I'm talking about pastors. Imagine with me for a moment that a younger version of myself could have had a safe place in a church, had the opportunity to attend a church that wouldn't judge me with every step that I took. Imagine if there were a pastor I could have spoken to honestly about how I was feeling and who I was attracted to. Imagine that I may have seen a rainbow flag being flown outside of a church, which would have been a signal to me that it was a safe place. That is why the work you are undertaking is crucial to your community. Let me be very, very clear. There are people in your community who are struggling with their own identities. These people may be struggling in a very quiet way, but you have an amazing opportunity to let them know that your congregation, this church, which I feel so welcome in today, is a safe place. You all have the opportunity to save the life of someone who may be at the end of their rope. If you think I am speaking in hyperbole, I promise you that I'm absolutely not. As a teacher, I saw my own students go through these crises of self and faith all the time. As a young person, I wish I had a place that was safe. Yes, my parents were very safe people, but I wanted more than that. I wanted a community that would embrace me. You have the opportunity to give that to young people in your community and to all people in your community. For those who may not know, although from what I've gathered, everyone here is pretty aware, which is great, June is Pride Month for the LGBTQ community. This month is particularly important for people in my community. It is the one month per year where people in the LGBTQ community feel truly celebrated. Unfortunately, hate is on the rise in our country. We've all seen it. We've all been affected by it, which makes the work of your congregation that much more important. I want to encourage you to continue the work to become a truly open and affirming congregation. Your work is vitally important, and I have no doubt that your work will save someone's life. It may not be today, and it may not be tomorrow, but the more that you recommit yourself to that work, the safer your community will be for LGBTQ people. Again, I want to sincerely thank you for inviting me to speak with you today, and I wish you all the best as you continue the important work of creating a more fair and just church that welcomes all into your community. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin. We will have a reception following worship today in the foyer, complete with rainbow cookies.